Are you ready?
Starting now?
Well, now you just messed it up, you knob. God, you know that the shit that we go through for this, huh?
I know. Fuckers better appreciate it. When we started, we were just like, yeah, we're just going to do this, man. You know, shoot our wad into the wind and see what happens. What's the title of this podcast again?
I don't know. I don't know. Something with a penis, I guess.
Right.
Our fucking faces are everywhere now.
Right.
You know, but
You're welcome, ladies.
Right. Popular with the ladies. Right. Oh, I'm not even going to apologize because hopefully it sounds fucking hilarious. Yeah, apparently this is fucking explicit now.
The explicit button. Let me use my finger.
La, 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 la.
It is time for another episode of Sober, Not Mature. And that episode starts now. All right, everyone. Welcome once again to another episode of Sober, Not Mature. And we actually have a guest again tonight, if anyone's been paying attention. So you know what? Because I get accused of not letting people introduce themselves right away. I gotta let Nicole introduce herself right away. So Nicole, say hi to everyone. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I'm from Canada, Saskatchewan, Saskatchewan, actually.
I was gonna say, yeah, we've got another one from Canada. So who was it? Sonia that we had talked to a couple of weeks ago was. Then she, I don't think she was born in Canada, but she lived there for a little while. And then the podcast we did, Eric from the Unfuck Yourself podcast
that's right.
is from, he's from Canada. So yeah, you're like our third person, well, not necessarily in recent months, but yeah, you're another one of them Canadians.
Another Canuck.
So.
It's a big country. There's lots of us, but not as many as you.
And you're all amassed on the border, ready to invade.
We have gun control. What are we invading with? Like moose?
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a I don't want to say a glitch, but we had a little bit of a setup issue to begin with. Nicole was on her computer and she switched to her phone, so hopefully the audio sounds good. We can hear her okay, but we just want to make sure to get everything on there and get everything set before we started. But before I forget, Mike, Nicole clearly has you beat with tattoos. There is no fucking doubt.
All right. I know it's a contest, but all right.
It's an inadvertent contest, and this is no shit. True story. She had posted a picture. This was probably 3-4 months ago, and you were sitting down, and she had shorts on, and I looked, and literally the picture looked like she was wearing tattoo leggings.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's sort of a new addiction, absolutely, and I've gotten all of them since I came into recovery.
Right.
Oh, really? Okay. Well,
yeah,
and that's something that we'll definitely want to hear about. So yeah, we'll talk tattoos. I have none, so I just kind of sit in awe sometimes. With Mike's got a ton of tattoos, but you're like covered head to toe, I think, in them, right? Close to.
Well, no, mostly just my limbs and a little bit on my back and chest, but yeah. I'm working on it though.
Well, that's cool. Well, so and you had asked us right before we started about a format, and we say this kind of quote unquote, but I'll let Mike explain a little bit about what our format is. It's laid back, but go ahead, Mike.
We have a format?
Sort of.
Right. Well, basically, we know how to get fucked up. We know how to fuck up our lives and the lives of everybody around us. We want to know about the solution. We definitely want to hear some background and, what it was like and all that stuff. But mostly we want to hear what you're doing today and, the solution. That's what we're interested in.
For sure. And I think that's best, right?
Oh yeah, I agree. And I know a little bit about your story, and you've told me like bits and pieces just in the messaging that we did, but I don't know all of it. So I mean, it'll be new for all of us. But yeah. So if you want to start off, I mean, maybe give your sobriety date, and then tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, how you got to where you are, and like Mike said, the solution part.
For sure. So my sobriety date is September 27th, 2018. And that's actually my second sobriety date because this is like basically my second kick at the can. I mean, there were times in the past where I was trying to clean up, but it just wasn't happening for me at all. I was just too far into my addiction, and nothing I was doing seemed to be working for me. And I think that I just wasn't given the gift of desperation at that point. Um, Also, for me, a lot of my youth was intrinsically linked to trauma that I had gone through, both, kind of as a child, but also in my marriage. And it's just how I knew to cope. And I think it was like about 6 months after I was coming off of my relapse. And it was like, I don't know, I think the spring of 2019. And I went to a mental health first aid class, and I had the instructor say to me, and this has stuck with me ever since, but she said, the brain can't really tell the difference between emotional pain and physical pain. And it was kind of like this huge aha moment for me because I had spent so much of my life trying to avoid pain. And the addiction piece was just so linked to the emotional pain that I had been in for such a long time. And that's why, I was really attached to the substances that I was using, and that way of coping because, it just pushed everything back. And that was really related to how I grew up as a kid as well. I grew up in like a really small community in Saskatchewan, which is sort of like in the middle of Canada. And not very many people in this province because it's really, really cold in the winter, and it's mostly farming community. I grew up in a family that really good morals, really good ethics. I learned a lot from my grandparents, and I had a really close family, but they also partied a lot. So, it was like this work hard, play hard mentality. And on my mom's side of the family, I was like eighth generation in Canada, and that's just how you coped. You didn't really deal with emotions. You pushed it down, and got drunk on the weekend and worked hard during the week. And if somebody was mad, there was a little bit of violence once in a while. And that's how it was. Like tough. These were tough people, living in minus 40 in 1900, and that's just how they coped. And so I think that also in this province that I live in, that it's pretty normal just to drink every day. I don't think that it's uncommon for people to, just basically live their lives like that and not even question whether they're an alcoholic. And people that live like that also don't have the same view of people that I think that wider society does in respect to addiction and alcohol abuse, because they think that if you're an alcoholic, it means you're homeless, or if you're an alcoholic, it means that you're living behind a dumpster, or if you're an alcoholic, you're rock bottom. And so, it doesn't matter if you drink every day if you have a job. It doesn't matter if you drink every day if you own things. It doesn't matter if you own your house and you have your kids, and all those things are great. You're not an alcoholic. But the truth of the matter is that you're not learning to how to deal with your emotions and emotional intelligence. And then when something really seriously goes wrong or really seriously goes sideways, you have no coping skills. And so for me, that was how I grew up. And I think that, coupled with the fact that I had really bad social anxiety, like I started drinking, I think when I was like 12 years old, and that was cool. Like my family, they didn't really care because, we were kids, and that's how they grew up. And so I started drinking when I was 12, totally acceptable. I think the first time I got really loaded, I was like, yeah, 12, and I was at my aunt's and I was babysitting, and me and my cousin drank like 12 beer, like puked my guts out, and that was terrible. But, it wasn't a big deal. And then when I was 15, I was introduced to drugs by my father. and just weed at the time. But then by the time I was 17, he had introduced me to cocaine. And I was kind of a bit of a wild kid, and I dropped out of high school, and I was back and forth between Saskatchewan and Vancouver, so like the West Coast, and did a lot of partying in the West Coast and that kind of thing. And but it just really wasn't. I didn't like living on the street, so I came back to Saskatchewan, and when I was 21, I decided it was time to have a kid. So I was 22 and I had my first baby, and I actually managed to keep my shit together for a while there. I was involved in a relationship, and we bought a house, and I started to go to university as a mature student because I didn't have a grade 12. And I went from a sociology degree to a law degree. And in between my sociology degree and my law degree, I actually broke up with my first child's father and ended up marrying somebody that I knew from high school. Now, this person that I knew from high school, he had a very severe alcohol problem. But again, since I grew up like that, and my dad was like that, and my larger family was like that, I didn't really think anything of it. And things were okay at first, made it through law school. Then we moved to the West Coast. So we moved to Vancouver so that I could practice law there. And it became evident pretty quickly into the marriage, I think probably about a year in, that things were just not going to go very well for us. Lots of drinking, lots of partying, lots of fighting. He couldn't keep a job. And I think it was like only about 6 months into our marriage, he got in a really bad car accident, and he was prescribed OxyContin. And because of how terrible our marriage was going, and there was some emotional abuse and not any physical abuse yet at this point, that came later after the OxyContin addiction started. But I was really disillusioned about the marriage itself, because I grew up in a family that, despite the fact that there was a lot of drinking, they stay married. Like my great grandparents, who I actually grew up with, they were married for 76 years. And my
Wow.
grandparents, they were married for like 60 years. And nobody got divorced in my family. The only person that got divorced in my family that I knew was my mom, and that's how I ended up living with my grandparents. So when I married this person, I actually I had planned to stay married until I died, because that's another thing that I learned when I grew up. So I wasn't capable of dealing with some of the stress that came with that situation. And since I had zero coping skills when things started going really badly, and there was also a lot of financial problems as well, because I was the only one working. I was like a relatively new lawyer, and I was working for a firm that we had a fee splitting agreement. So 50% of the money that I brought in, the legal fees that I brought in, went to the law firm that I worked for, and I got 50%. But I'm at this point now, I have 3 kids, and I'm married to an alcoholic with OxyContin addiction. And don't get me wrong, I was using alcohol pretty much every day. I started using cocaine, and like I said, I was introduced to it at 17, and since the alcohol wasn't helping me cope anymore, then I started using harder drugs. And the coke thing, it started just weekends, and then all of a sudden it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then I was doing it before court, and it was really out of hand, and I was really depressed at the same time, but I was trying to keep it together because I had kids. And something that I told myself when I was growing up living with my grandparents was oh, I'd never be like my mom. I would never let my kids go to their grandparents. I would never be like my mom. I would never leave my kids behind. And the fact of the matter is that it was worse. I lived with my grandparents, and they were amazing, and I had that stability. And now my kids were living in an environment where me and their dad were fighting, not only arguing, but it became physical after a while, because He had the Oxycontin addiction, and so he was physically addicted, and he was sick. And then what happened was, because we didn't have a steady stream of income, I decided that I was going to go and work for Crown. I was going to become a prosecutor because, you get an actual salary with them. Well, that was a really great fucking idea because, you're going to be a prosecutor with a coke problem. And, the thing was that I didn't really think it was a big deal because I was going to court every day and I was winning. And, how can it be that bad if you're winning? And how can it be that bad if the people in your office aren't saying anything? And like, I was coming to work, hungover or with black eyes. There was one point that I didn't come to work for like 2 weeks. Nobody even asked me where I was. It was crazy. And so when I went to Crown, then the firm that I was working for like almost 4 years, they noticed that there was some billing discrepancies. Because I had started taking cash from clients. And I don't mean like stealing from them. I mean like instead of giving the firm their cut of the fee splitting agreement, I was just pocketing all of it. And as a lawyer, you have a trust account and all of your funds have to go through that trust account and you have to bill and transfer it to your billing account and then you get the money. Well,
Right.
when you have a drug addiction, you need to get money fast.
Yep.
So I started like taking cash from clients and doing stuff like, on the DL and not letting my firm know what I was doing. And my billings went from, 140,000 to like 70,000. And what was funny in the end is that I got sanctioned by the Law Society, and it was over $7,000. It wasn't over a lot of money, and it wasn't like I'd been doing it for a really long time. It was just because I just was incapable of operating on the up and up at that point. Like I couldn't do it anymore. And so I had to resign from Crown, and I had a Law Society sanction, and I was ready to kind of admit what I did, and I wanted to go and start looking into recovery and that sort of thing. But the thing was this, like I went to a counselor and that was fine. But I mean, the environment that I was living in wasn't at all conducive to me cleaning up. I mean, my husband was using just as much, if not more. And like I said, he was also using OxyContin. And then I started using OxyContin as well. And so we became physically addicted to that drug. And he got cut off by his doctor. And we started using heroin.
That always comes next. And Mike and I not only know people, but have had people on here that as soon as you mentioned the car accident and the fact that what he was prescribed, I mean, Mike, you probably knew where that was going to, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I cut out the middleman and I just went to heroin, but yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so real quick though, Nicole. So so you got, obviously you're doing the things with the law firm. You were skimming off of what you should have been paying to the firm from your clients.
Yeah.
Were you caught and then admitted it, or just admitted it, or how did that piece happen?
Well, since I switched from since I resigned from the firm and then went to Crown, they then had access to my billings. Okay. And I had been doing a little bit of double billing, but I was too loaded to actually try to cover anything up, and so with the Law Society hearing, there's basically two parts. It's the trial and then the sentencing, except for it's the fact-finding part and then still the sentencing. So when I went to the fact-finding part of the Law Society hearing, I admitted it. I'm like, yeah, that's totally what I did. I admit that I did that. And I have addiction issues, right? And unfortunately, I had addiction issues. I had no problem admitting I had addiction issues, but I had no idea how to start cleaning myself up. The counselor wasn't working out for me because it was a male, and because I was in an abusive relationship and there were other things going on in my life, I just couldn't even connect with him. And tried to go to detox, and that didn't work out because, like I said, I'm returning home to an environment with somebody who's using. And so my grandpa then passed away. And like I said, I grew up with my grandparents, and he was like my dad. And came back to Saskatchewan for the funeral. And my husband got a DUI when we were here, and he got thrown in jail and went back to Vancouver. And I was supposed to have the sentencing part of my hearing, and I was too fucked up. Like, there's no fucking way I could go. Like, the use had become like every day, all day. And then not only that, my grandpa dying and that grief and me not being able to deal with what already was going on in my life, it just was like beyond. And so I just didn't go. And I convinced myself, I'm like, you don't want to be a lawyer anymore anyways, because you don't want to deal with that oversight. And clearly, you can't handle it, and you're not good enough, and you can't practice law. And it was so screwed, because I was a really good lawyer. Like, I got published decisions. And I basically just decided, like, nobody's going to hire you, and you should just forget about it. So I didn't go. I didn't go to that part of the hearing. And instead of being suspended, like they said they were going to suspend me for a month and a half, they disbarred me because there was really no choice. So in retrospect, though, and I know this now, even if I had gone, and even if I only had been suspended for a month and a half, we all know that I probably would have got disbarred a little later on, because I just wasn't ready to quit fusing at that point.
Sure.
Right.
So yeah.
And I think all of us have have those moments. And I talked about that with Mike. I did my own training and consulting business for like a year, and I don't know, like 4 months before my ex and I split up. And this was in the depths of my drinking. I mean, this was in like 2005 to 2006, and I didn't get sober until 2010. But for the longest time, I'm like, oh, I didn't have enough time to make it work. Well, once I got sober and I started telling people about it, I think Mike and I were, you and I were the ones who were talking about this. And you might have even said it to me. You're like, you never would have made it work anyhow. You were fucking drinking all the time. You were too fucking loaded to make it work.
Exactly.
But these realizations that we get, when we sober up,
Right. And woulda, coulda, shoulda. I think that, if the situation was different, maybe I could have cleaned up then. But the situation was not different, and I did not clean up then. And in fact, it got way fucking worse.
Right.
Usually does.
So that's just the first part. That's just the first part. So basically, when I found out that I got disbarred, I then tried to commit suicide. So my in-laws came in, and they took my kids. At first, social services took my kids, which was, let me tell you, really humiliating. And being disbarred is also slightly humiliating. So, I fucking, I hated myself so much. I was so disgusted by myself that I just continued to use. And so basically became homeless. My husband and I, we stayed together, and I think we became more running partners than anything, because I went from being a lawyer to doing Home Depot scams and stealing catalytic converters out of Forerunners real fast. Went from wine and blow to heroin and crack. Living in trap houses, and my husband, the one thing that I did learn from him over time was how not to deal drugs, because he was the worst drug dealer on the planet. And, he was a drug dealer kind of before we were together. He was the weed dealer. It wasn't a big deal, but, it became a necessity after, because we had no income. And so, you survival deal. And with those other scams that we were pulling and that kind of shit, we were dealing dope a bit. But, things were bad. We had nowhere to go. And I knew that I wanted to clean up at that point, but it just wasn't happening. And at one point, I went to detox, and then I couldn't get a treatment bed for 6 months. And then I finally got a treatment bed. I was in treatment for 2 weeks, and I got a weekend out, and I was using within an hour. And I was just I'm like, what do I do? Because, I'm sick of being sick. And if you have an opiate addiction, that's what it is. You don't even get high anymore. And so that's why we were smoking crack too. And So I'm like, I got this big plan. I'm like, let's go back to Saskatchewan. Go back to Saskatchewan, and I've got family support, and we can clean up there. So takes us 5 weeks to pack the fucking U-Haul. We drive out to Saskatchewan, and nobody wants anything to do with me.
Right.
My family, if you go to grandma's, we will call the cops on you. And so we borrowed money off of our oldest kid and got a place to live. Basically kicked it for like 6 weeks. We were so sick, like it was really, really terrible. And unfortunately, that's not where it ended. Then we started doing some bullshit in Saskatoon as well, and then we met somebody that we had known from previous, and they came to us and they said, "Do you know anybody on the coast that can get meth?" And since we did know a lot of people on the coast and we knew a lot of people in Saskatoon that were from that lifestyle that had money, we started doing runs from Saskatchewan to BC and picking up. And so we actually became like, I don't know, it was crazy. All of a sudden, now I have got a meth problem as well. And it was a weird situation because the city's really small and everybody kind of gets to know who you were. And the cops knew who we were pretty much right off the bat. And then the abuse got worse. And because I also had been dealing drugs, what the fuck did I need him for anymore? And so we ended up breaking up. And I just sort of took over. I met some other people and I went from survival dealing to dealing for cash and large amounts of cash. And in 2012 there was an attempt on my life. My hotel room door got kicked in and two guys came in with a golf club and a hammer and they tried to murder me.
Wow.
And I was in the hospital for, I think it was like almost a month. I had 33 staples in my head and I almost died and I still wasn't ready to quit, you know? And I got out and I knew who did it. I knew who did it to me. And it wasn't because I owed them money. It was because they owed me money and they didn't want to pay me. And so instead of quitting, I kept going. And now I had more street cred because I wouldn't talk to the cops. And so I was approached by organized crime. I'm not going to name names. But ended up dealing on an even larger scale. And I think it was like probably 8 months after that. And I noticed that there were drones following me around. And I thought I was just paranoid and high. But no, that's not what was happening. I had this unfortunate nickname of the meth queen. The city's not that big, right? And so I got busted. And I had a really large quantity on me and I had a lot of cash. And because I didn't have a criminal record, they let me out. And I got out and I can remember sitting on the side of my bed and I had a curfew. And I, again, broke. I had no money now and I can't deal drugs anymore and they took all my money away and I have this curfew and I remember sitting on the side of my bed and feeling exactly like I did when I got disbarred. And that's so fucked up, but that lifestyle had become just like such a part of who I was. And at that point, like I was ready for it to be done, but I was involved with some pretty scary people and it couldn't just be done. And so I got arrested again. This time though, I was 6 months pregnant. I got pregnant. I didn't even know I was pregnant because for Christ's sakes, I was 44 years old and I really didn't see that coming. Went into jail. Yeah, right. Went into jail and lost the baby in jail. More trauma, you know, and they released me again on bail and I got out and I was like, now what? And I was supposed to go to treatment, didn't go to treatment and things just, you know, continued. And I was in my house and I was packing my suitcases and I was like, you know what? I'm leaving this province. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to go back to BC. And I was fucking high. Like I wanted out so bad that I was just trying to think of a way to get out of it. And I sure the hell didn't want to go to prison. But that was the other option. And the cops came to do a condition check and guess where I got to go. So Yeah, I was ready though. Like I walked out and I was like, I need to end this. I need to find a different way to live. And I couldn't see any other way to get out. And so yeah, I was like, okay, let's do this. And I went into prison and I pled guilty and I got sentenced to 3.5 years. And it was the best fucking thing that could have ever happened to me.
Right.
Yeah. So, there's a little bit more.
But I mean, that
But-
sounds
but-
like a turning point, but a forced turning point, but a good one.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, it was good. So when I got to prison, I was actually quite happy to be there. And after I had a little bit of time and space away from the drugs, and my mind was starting to come back to me, I was like, what the fuck did you do? Like, you have, this amazing family of support. You have 3 kids. You have, 2 university degrees. You had it all. And now here you are in prison on the treadmill, running and crying because you feel bad for yourself. And like, what the fuck even happened? And so when I was in there, I decided, I need to find something to help keep me clean, because I don't know how to do it myself. And the one thing that occurred to me that I had never had in my whole entire life was, and this sounds so cliche, because I know a lot of people find, God or whatever their idea of God is in prison. And for me, it was my creator. I was doing time at a healing lodge and started going to some institutional meetings, NA and then AA in the community. And I did a little bit of step work on my own without a sponsor, because there wasn't a sponsor available to me in there. But I did a lot of letters. I sort of started with a step 8 and wrote letters to my family, wrote letters to my kids. And I knew, that it was really important that I just be really honest and accountable to everybody that I'd hurt, because I had hurt a lot of people in my addiction. And not only had I hurt a lot of people, like I hurt families and I hurt community and I hurt property. Like whole apartment buildings were fucked up by some of the things that I was doing when I was dealing. And so I was really lucky because I got sent to treatment in Calgary, and that was only 8 months in. And in Canada, you are eligible for parole when you are 25% done your prison sentence. And so since I didn't have a criminal record prior to that, I went to treatment for 6 weeks. And when I came back from treatment, I was granted parole at 9.5 months.
Nice.
So I got released at 9.5 months. Got released to a community in British Columbia that was very far from Saskatoon and very far from the people that I knew in Saskatoon and very far from that lifestyle, and close to where my children were. My 2 younger children were about an hour and a half to away from where I was released. And at that point, 90% of my family had forgiven me and allowed me back into their lives. And I think that was the best piece of all, and especially the piece around my kids, because I hadn't had them for a really long time. They had been with their grandparents for almost 8 years, and for almost 4 years before I got arrested, I didn't speak to anybody. Like anybody that I knew when I was growing up, or anybody that I was close to in my family, I totally alienated myself from that so that I could continue to use. And so when I got out, I did a lot of volunteering. I volunteered for like a couple different community organizations, but I still wasn't really 100% ready, to be honest with myself. I was going to meetings and I got a sponsor, but I wasn't really committed. And I got to step 4 in the 12 steps, and I was going to Narcotics Anonymous. And I just sort of stopped going to meetings and I stopped doing my step work. And then my sponsor relapsed and I started slipping into old behaviors. And I was on parole and I was having to piss. So I think that that's what kept me accountable. But, I just, I didn't know what my life was going to look like. And parts of it was that I wasn't being transparent about the fact that I was an addict. I didn't feel like I was still carrying a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And I wasn't transparent about the fact that I'd done prison time, and I didn't know who I was still because of that. And slipping back into old behaviors, and I ended up running the border and coming down to Kansas and to be with a guy that had also been released from prison around the same time that I was, and I relapsed within a month.
Okay.
Like it was fucked up. But down there, that's no joke. Canada, if you want to hurt somebody, you hit them over the head with a golf club, or you got to stab them to death because of gun control. But down there, like, people were getting shot, and some of the stuff that was going on down there was crazy. And like all at addiction or drinking situations, like, it escalated really fast. I was basically back to where I was before I went into prison. Like, within 2 weeks, I lost 25 pounds. Like, it was bad. And came back to Canada, went back down there, came back to Canada, and then I've said, you know what, this is fucking stupid. This is so stupid. So I went back to Kamloops, where I got released from prison, and this time I was serious. This time I was so serious about it. And so I got a sponsor, who's still my sponsor today. Started going to NA very frequently. Started working my steps, but I do have to say I've only done one set. But it was life-changing for me. And when I stepped into that and I was able to be honest with myself and accountable and transparent and vulnerable and take all the things that I was learning from my program and my sponsor and my step work and apply them to my life, big changes started happening. I think it took me like 6 months, and I was yelling to the rooftops when I got back to Kamloops. I'm like, hey, yeah, so I'm in recovery, and yeah, I went to prison, but you know what? I want to take that lived experience and make it count. I have 2 university degrees, and I might not have the credibility that some organizations want or some jobs want. But there are a lot of organizations that support people with mental health issues or addiction issues. A lot of people that are organizations that are doing things with social justice and with recovery. And I can take my education and I can take what I've learned in my program and I can take my lived experience and I can use that to help people like me and to make people like me not feel as stigmatized and let them know that there's people that, support them and want to help them. And so I got a job with an organization that supports people with mental health and addiction issues. And from that job, I then took a job with another organization. I basically was working 6-7 days a week. And I went hard, like with everything. I went hard with my program. I went hard with work. I went hard with supporting other people and really just carrying the message. And the funny thing about my Instagram page is I started it pretty much right after I came back from my relapse. And so it's sort of like this really cool thing because I've built this community and it's all about my recovery, but it's about support too. And so, it's part of who I am. And I love that my life has just gotten better every day because of it. And not only because of my program, but because of the people that I've surrounded myself with and the things that I expose myself to. And I know that it 100% is because of my program and because of how transparent I am that things have gone as well as they have.
Right.
And so, yeah. That's where I'm at.
So real quick, and you know what? Why don't we do this, Mike? Let's take we've gotten through obviously the story up to the point because this is kind of going into more of your solution and what you're doing today type of thing. So why don't we take a quick break now? And Mike, obviously, you can talk us into it.
All right then. Well, stay with us. We're going to find out what happens next right after this word from our sponsor.
Hey everyone, it's your friends at Sober Not Mature.
Hi there.
And yes, it's both of your friends this time. Hi Mike, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Bill?
I am doing well, but we do have a purpose. We actually usually talk about our one website, but we actually have 2 websites now. So
2
websites in one. All right, so So everyone knows we still have the podcast website that is www.SoberNotMature.com. And we just launched the store website, so we also have that. Do you know what the website address is on that one, Mike?
Of course I don't.
It's pretty easy, Mike. It's www.SoberNotMatureShop.com. So, but from the podcast website, you can still hit the store link and get into the web store, or you can access it from our Instagram page through the highlights. We've been posting quite a bit about it, and we'll continue to do that. But do you know what's on the second website, Mike?
Well, there's a store. There are products that you can purchase for you and your loved ones.
Well, Mike, do we still have merchandise?
We have merchandise. Well, we got T-shirts and coffee mugs and all kinds of crap.
And one of the coolest parts, we also do have all the recovery books from Hazelden, which is kind of a big deal.
That is a big deal.
At least for us. So all the books that we read, God Grant Me 24 Hours, the Big Book, the 12 and 12, all of those books are available for sale on our website. And again, that store website is www.sober.
Trying to help, man.
I know you are. You're not helping, though. Okay, now I got to say www.SoberNotMatureShop.com. .com. Visit that today, or visit the podcast website, which is, again, the podcast website. So
www.SoberNotMature.com.
Did you just say sober but not mature?
Yeah, sure. Write that down.
Yeah, like fucking mush mouth or something. All right, everyone. You've suffered enough with this, and we'll get back to what we were talking about previously. So visit the websites, though. All right, everyone, welcome back. And when we were talking just a second ago here, so you're out of your relapse, and when you talked about the only part that I missed is you were talking about the steps, and then you said you only did a certain point, so I missed that part. Were you saying you only did a certain part of the steps, or you only to a point, because I think that's important. Yeah. I think it was you cut out when you had said that. I didn't hear that part.
Okay. So before my relapse, I only made it to step 3, the end of step 3. And I absolutely know that it was definitely related to the fact that I only made it that far that contributed to my relapse. That contributed to me sliding back into, pattern behaviors. Because, when you're living in a particular way your whole entire life, it's only natural that you're going to slip back into that if you don't do the work. And you don't, have a solution or an alternate way to deal with some of the things that you've been dealing with. And so when I came back after my relapse, I got a little more serious about my program. And what I did say was, I've done a set of steps, but I've only done one set of steps. And I started another set of steps, but it took me 4 whole years, almost 4 whole years, to do my first step or set of steps. The thing about it was, though, and people laugh at me all the time because I call it marinating. I used to marinate, and I was really, really thorough with my steps. Like, I did a lot of writing. My poor sponsor, we would sit down, and when you're going through one step together, it wasn't just like, a short period of time. We would have to meet 3 or 4 times to go through the step work, and I felt like I was sort of getting the lessons along with it while I was doing it. And I don't recommend that for everybody, but it works for me. Right. And yeah.
Well, but the thing of it is, though, is that, so you said you only went through one set. So you said only went through the steps one time? Okay, yeah. But so in Mike and I, I'm sure Mike's got something to say on this too, but
I've got a few thoughts.
Okay, so you know what? Actually, go ahead, Mike, because you usually explain this part a little bit better than I do. So jump up.
Right. Well, the way we were taught was we do 4, 5, and 8 to the best of our ability. We never have to do those again. That's what the 10th step is for. Oh. But the rest of the steps, okay, I've got to work every day. One day at a time, every day. See, I work 1, 2, and 3 before I get out of bed every day. I don't know that. Right. 6 and 7, absolutely every day. And then, 10, 11, and 12, which are called the maintenance steps. Of course, I have to work every day. And 9, I've got to work every day. You know, I've got amends to make for the rest of my life. That's cool. But yes, I work all of those steps except for those 3, 4, 5, and 8. I work every day. Yeah. So I mean, working. I don't. Yeah. I mean, I don't understand this. You know, I hate when I hear somebody from the podium, somebody in a meeting talking, saying I worked the steps in past tense. I don't understand that. I've got to work this program every day.
Yes, I love how you put that, and I've never really thought of it that way, but it makes total sense because I do my steps 1, 2, and 3 every day. In fact, I do them several times during the day.
Sure.
Surrender has been the biggest thing for me. Surrender, faith, and acceptance, and I always hashtag that shit all over the place on my Instagram because that is absolutely what has kept me clean over the last few years. I didn't understand surrender the first time around. I thought I just had to surrender, you know, the fact that I had a drug addiction. I just had to surrender the fact that I had a drinking problem. I didn't understand that I had to surrender every fucking piece of my life.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's the thing when you had mentioned the reason I wanted to you know pause on that you only did one set.
Yeah.
I have never started from step 1 and gone through the book and done all of them again. Mike, to my best of my knowledge, has never sat down and done, you know, the full 12 steps again in more of a schooled like fashion, you know, like 1 through 12 type of thing. But here's the deal: is like, and that's why I wanted him to explain it because he does that really well. Is that we completed the steps the first time with sponsor, did all those things. We went through that first time for the first time. And then, you know, every single day. And that's why I wanted to bring that up because I pay attention on Instagram. You know, some of it's just watching memes and I post to myself, but I watch your posts and I watch what you post and that sort of thing. And so you're doing that. You're already just, whether you know it or not, you're working all those steps on a daily basis, whether they're in a meme or what you post, you're doing it all the time. That's why I kind of wanted to reinforce that for you.
Well, I appreciate that, but the step 10 thing too, also like that's really important because it's accountability for me. I think that, and like I said, you know, I wasn't really ready to be transparent, or I wasn't really ready to let go of some of that guilt and shame that I was carrying around, and that accountability piece, and now, you know, this is something that I've recognized over the last 4 years is when you're willing to be vulnerable and you're willing to be accountable and you're willing to like say, you know, listen, I fucked up, and it can be something really small or it can be something really big, and I do that through the day in a lot of my communications with people, and I have built like some of the most authentic relationships, whether they're like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or like ongoing, just by having that attitude. And you know, step 10, you're supposed to do it at the end of the day. Like I said, I'm doing it 3 or 4 times during the day because it's just sort of become automatic. And so I love how you explained it like that because I've just never really thought of it like that. You know, it hadn't really been approached to, you know, like that. So yeah, you know, that's amazing. Thanks.
I've got to work this program every day. Otherwise, I don't have a fucking choice. I will pick up again and I will start hurting everybody around me again. And I don't want to do that. So I work this program every day.
Yes. I love that.
Yeah, and it and like I said, it does so much of this stuff. Thankfully, it becomes natural, you know, and it is kind of silly, like you said. You know, Instagram kind of keeps you accountable. One of the reasons that I joined Instagram to begin with, before we started this, it was I started under just a random name that I did to begin with, so I could interact and start being more open. But you know, if you notice on Instagram, whether you do or don't, I never use my full first and last name on there, and where Mike.
Oh, I had to ask you.
Yeah, where Mike does. I mean, Mike uses his, you know, his full name. I don't, you know, and because I want to be accountable to the people that I want to be accountable to. I'm not fully just, and it's based on, again, there's a lot of reasons behind it. It's irrelevant, but I've chosen that since the day I got sober, and I don't hide. You know, I'm not ashamed of who I am, but I'm very choosy about who I share that with, you know, and Instagram, as weird as it might be in this, you know, this has given me an opportunity to be more open and to be probably, like you just said, be more vulnerable. You know, it gave Mike and I an opportunity to shoot the shit every week because he's in Cleveland and I'm in, well, now Indiana. I was in Wisconsin, but so we're really close and we're brothers and we're all those sort of things, but we just didn't have that opportunity. But But yeah, I mean, I know what you mean. It is a matter of getting out there and doing those things. But one thing that you had brought up to me too. So when you were going through that whole thing with the magazine thing, you said that you considered yourself a program girl. Do you still do like meetings and all that stuff now, or how is that? How do you do that sort of thing now?
Okay, so like I said, I've got really bad anxiety, and so in Kamloops, where I got released from prison and where my sponsor is, and all of that, I have, because when I go back, I'll go to meetings there too. Again, I have a home group, and that's my recovery community. Like I can walk into a meeting and I know everybody, right? My social anxiety is so fucking bad, and like since I moved recently because I got a new job, then that's part of my story as well. Like I went from being a tenant support worker, just supporting people like with addiction and mental health issues, to going to another organization that I was fundraising, then I was coordinating a program, and then I was running a whole housing portfolio. And now I'm an executive director of a social justice organization that supports criminalized women and women in conflict with the law. And this, like, it makes perfect sense. When I came back to Saskatoon, where I was arrested, 3 different people sent me that posting, and I was like, can I go back there? I don't know if I can go back there safely. And I've now been back almost a month. It'll be a month and 3 days. And the narrative has changed for me. Like, you know, when I rolled into town, I felt different. And that person that I was, I don't know where that person is anymore. And so I still, you know, I think about it a lot, but it's hard for me to even identify. But the thing is this, I haven't gone to any meetings yet because I'm still trying to navigate how I feel about, you know, being back here and everything. I plan on it. I went to meet some friends of mine the other day, and that was the first thing. I'm like, so are you going to meetings? Like, so I got a list 2 days ago, and I just made friends with somebody on Facebook that I'm going to reach out to, and I'm going to start going to meetings. I absolutely need to. I don't have any friends really here, which is fine, but I can't just work, you know? So that meeting piece is really important to me, and that outside perspective is really important to me. And I need to hear other people in the program and to hear what they've got going on. And I'm going to have to go to meetings until I die. And I know that. It's just overcoming that anxiety, and I'll do it, and I'll go. So I'll check in with you and let you know how it went.
Right. Cool. Yeah, right. Because, you know, on my own, man, I'll fuck shit up all over the place.
Oh,
yeah. Yep. I need other people to say, nope, that's wrong. And I got to go, oh, yeah, I guess it is.
And then, you know, and that's the thing, though. And Mike and I have talked about it plenty. But you know, he mainly goes to his home group on a weekly basis, which is every Sunday. And you can explain why you go to that meeting now, Mike. I mean, you've been doing it for years.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I don't go to a meeting. I have a support group. You know, I've been doing this almost 13 years. Next month it'll be 13 years if I keep doing what I'm supposed to do. And but you know, yeah, I don't go to the meeting because I need to go to a meeting. I go to my home group because I keep the doors open. I'm being of service.
Right.
That's why I go to meetings now, you know, to keep the door open. Yeah, you know, if I ever get to the point where I have to go to a meeting because I need to go to a meeting, I'm fucking shit up long before I need to go to the meeting.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, I'm working the steps. I'm working my program. I'm not keeping myself sober, but I'm allowing the program to keep me sober by working the program.
Service.
Right.
Yeah.
So I go to a meeting to be of service. I don't go to the meeting because I need the meeting. You know, that was my first 5 years. I went to meetings because I needed to go to a meeting. Yeah. Now I go to a meeting to keep the doors open.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm 4.5 years right now, and I just finished that set of steps in, I guess it was September last year, and my sponsor was like on me. It's time to sponsor somebody.
Right.
I tried to sponsor a couple people. It didn't work out for various reasons. But the one thing that I have done for service, that I continue to do for service, and I bet you can't tell that I have really bad anxiety about, I have this rule: if I get asked to speak, I do. And so I've been doing a lot of speaking in the last couple of years. Like I speak at Detox, and I spoke at Sober Living, and then I ended up speaking at the law school like 4 times. and I've done a couple podcasts. And in May, I'm speaking at the Provincial Judges Conference in front of 130 fucking judges.
Nice.
I don't even know, like I'm shitting myself. But I think that it's good because those are the people that actually need to hear some of the things that I'm talking about. And so will I continue to spread the message to people that are still struggling? I think that it's also important to spread the message to people that have no fucking understanding as well.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
So,
And the thing of it is, and and I was going to God when we were out in Cleveland, and I moved back to Wisconsin when I was three years and I don't know 4 or 5 months sober, and I was going to a lot of meetings in Cleveland and did the same thing when I first moved because I was anytime I moved to usually in a different area, different circumstance, I jump back into meetings because I'm out of my element, And the
yeah.
pandemic threw me and everyone else off, and I was doing online meetings, and
Oh,
then
yeah.
started listening to podcasts, and then we started doing, I joined Instagram, and we started doing this thing. This has been just this podcast. I mean, and Mike and I mention it all the time. Has been huge. Once again, it was an opportunity. The only goal we had to begin with was, well, first of all, we did it on it was a whim and kind of a joke, figuring, fuck it, man, all these people out there, we can do this, which again, physically we can put a headset on and throw a microphone in front of our face and talk some shit. And that's what we've done. But then we started to get
Yeah.
some feedback, and then we started to, get feedback from people that aren't necessarily in recovery, and normies and all these different things. And then it turns out that, like, wow, this is somehow, some way, right, Mike? And he always says that.
Yeah, somehow or another, we're making somebody's life better. Imagine that.
And it's weird because and we every once in a while we get these messages on Instagram, usually when we get them, I'll bring them up, and I'll read them on here. And they're, I mean, on a weekly basis, one or two usually, if somebody messages us about something, sometimes they're saying we love your content. All that means is, they love the memes that the fucking nasty ass shit that I post at the time. But at least that's the way I look at it. But then somebody will say that, hey, it's because every single day I post one of my readings from the morning, and I do it. It's something that means something to me, but every once in a while, I mean, I don't think the reading's much of anything. I mean, it meant something to me and I read it, but then we'll get a ton of comments and a ton of people will, interact with it or like it or whatever the deal is. And I'm like, really? And I read it again. I'm like, okay, it seems, kind of vanilla to me, but that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it means to me or what anything Mike and I say,
Right.
what it means to, to he and I. It's what, if it lands on somebody's ears, the right way, that's all that matters, So,
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
but so
Yeah.
you were working with people in basically, our type of people in the recovery or in the alcohol and drug kind of treatment sort of thing. And explain now what you're doing, executive director of, and I know you were talking about women involved with the law and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah. It's there's actually, like, there's a Canadian association, but there's also locals all across Canada that are loosely related. It's called the Elizabeth Fry Society of Saskatchewan. There's Elizabeth Fry's all across Canada. I was working at the one in Kamloops as well. Basically, they support women that are in conflict with the law, criminalized women, and basically, diversion from prison, and also reintegration from prison. And they support have other supportive programs, like we run an addictions program, like an outpatient addictions program. We also have like a drop-in center, and we have court workers that go and provide supports to women. That's the organization that I'm working for right now. And the one in Kamloops, they had housing. We don't have any housing. We need housing. But basically, I've gone from, being a lawyer to being able to use those skills in my job now, which is really important to me. And it's more of a social justice lens, because it's serving women that are vulnerable and in those cycles that I was in myself, right?
Yeah. So basically you're able to help yourself from years back. I mean,
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, in a way, you know, and it's funny because this is also the organization that I volunteered for when I was released from prison. And so, you know, they helped me a lot when I got out, and being able to give back to community in that way. Also, you know, I got LinkedIn, and I was able to help them, and they were able to help me. And I've been working for Elizabeth Fry's for almost 5 years at this point, and I got to do some regional advocacy work, which is like prison in reach, which is also, I think, helpful as well. Almost, you know, I don't know what exactly the percentage of women that are incarcerated have, you know, addiction and alcoholism problems, but we know it's pretty high, right?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
We'll go ahead and say about
yeah,
90%.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And so, you know, I'm basically looking at this point, like I've only been in this position for a month, but I'm looking at gaps in services so that we can start addressing some of these things before people actually, you know, are sitting in prison.
Sure.
Because that's, you know, it's not the best place. And the thing is, and I don't kid myself, I'm coming from a place of privilege, right? Like I had 2 university degrees, and I'm a little different than a lot of the women that I was incarcerated with. A lot of those women are coming from you know, terrible trauma, terrible childhood trauma, and they don't have the privilege that I have, and the barriers that they're facing are a lot bigger than anything that I ever faced. And so I feel like, you know, I've got a bit of credibility and respect to being able to talk to other people that are professionals, and also, you know, understanding what those women are going through or what sort of barriers they're facing. Because, like, even though I don't have the same barriers, I did face some of that when I went, you know, when I was coming out of prison, and I didn't really understand what it was going to look like for me. And I think that led me to relapse, and that easily could have led me back to prison again. And so, you know, I think that I have a responsibility to kind of translate, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah. But the cool thing
Yeah.
is the solution's the same for all of us.
It is. It absolutely is. But making people that don't understand addiction understand that that's where the funding needs to go is difficult, right? Because, you know, even if you're getting released from prison, you can make it to an NA meeting or an AA meeting and that sort of thing. If you don't have housing, you're
Right.
fucked.
Right.
If you don't have those supports, like financially, you're fucked. Like, so it's finding those wraparound supports for people so that they can have stability and consistency in
So
their lives.
what you're trying to do when you're talking about that is trying to get that financial support from governmental agencies or whatever the deal is to be able to. Okay, I get
Yep.
it. Yeah, and that's that's the unfortunate
Yeah.
part. Unless, well, and we know people. We got sober with people that were, you know, within the, you know, the courts, and we know judges, and we know doctors, and we know lawyers, and we know all
Yeah.
those people, you know, from the top to the bottom. But it is from a
Mhm.
governmental standpoint, there's not always that, you know, that exact funding or that understanding of what people need. So, but the cool part is, and this has been probably a topic of conversation, God, Mike, I don't know how many times, that how all this shit that we go through, you know, obviously benefits us, so we could take all this freaking garbage and all this pain, this suffering that we had ourselves, but also that we inflicted on other people, and now to be able to turn it around and use that to help people is pretty fucking cool, you know. So.
Right. Yeah. And I feel like it was especially important for me to come back to this community because, like I said, when I got out, I was in I was in a different community, and I was volunteering, and I was giving back, and I was doing all these things with community organizations, but that's not my community. I mean, it became my community, but this, where I am now, this is my community, and I feel like I can do a lot of really good things, and I'm looking forward to giving back.
So you've been back there for a month, and I know you said that when, as you put it, when you rolled
Yep.
into town, you felt differently. Did you feel? I mean, have you run across? In going back to the same area where you were, you know, using and doing all those different things, because you're in that same type of area, right?
Yeah.
Was that like? Have you ran
Yeah.
into people that you knew from the past or anything like that, or you just typically stay away from
Oh,
the
yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah.
places, and things?
Well, I mean, it's small. There's only 270,000 people in the city. Like, I mean, it's big enough that you can avoid certain things, but my office is right in the
Oh,
fucking hood. Like, my office is half a block from one of my really good buddies that we used to like trap out of his house. I'm probably 5 blocks from one of the biggest traps that I used to work out of. I've seen probably, I don't know how many people that I used to sell drugs to,
right.
you know. Uh, but like I said, it's about changing that narrative. I've seen somebody that I was in prison with because I'm serving women that are in prison, and this is also somebody that I used with, and it's interesting to me because it doesn't always have to be about that. It's about those changes that you're making, and whether that person has made those changes or not. If they see that you have, it's actually pretty profound.
Right. Yeah. Attraction rather than promotion.
Right.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Well, it was just it was funny because when I moved back to Wisconsin, I lived in the area that I lived in. I ended up getting a job, I don't know, hour and a half away from where it was, but my son still lived in that area. So, I go back into these areas where, and I was a straight booze hound. I mean, I wasn't in the drugs.
Yeah.
Not that it really matters, but I don't know. I was passing and I told Mike the one time I passed probably 7 or 8 or 9 different liquor stores going to pick up my son and go watch his practice, go to dinner, and go back to the hotel I was staying in. It was crazy, because all he said, I texted him right away. I'm like, you wouldn't believe this, and he's like, all he says to me is like, enjoy the freedom, which. I didn't have to stop. I didn't have to worry about which one I stopped at before. I don't go to bars these days unless there's an event, or a funeral, right, Mike? Yeah.
Right.
His girlfriend's dad passed away, and then they had we went to the cemetery and they did a little memorial ceremony for him there, and then we ended up to get together at a bar. So Mike and I hung out in a bar for 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it was.
Yeah, something like that.
But it was cool. We were there for a purpose, not that we were for a bar.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's why I mentioned like the people, places, and things, because they're I don't go back around bars and clubs and shit like that I used to go to, and not that I did a lot of that, but I avoid things like that, and I don't hang around with people I know that are going to be drinking, or maybe don't support the the type of life that I want to live these days too, which it's a personal choice. I mean, I could end up in that circumstance, but I don't have to, so I choose not to.
Right. Yeah. It's like I said, it's about changing that narrative, right? So when I came off that relapse and I was working with the building that I was working in, it was a wet building, which means you can use in the building. So I was like around a lot of drugs and people using drugs. But since I was there for a purpose and I was there to support and provide harm reduction and make sure people that weren't dying, I mean, it was different because I wasn't triggered, and it wasn't something that I was even considering at that point. And it was the same when I came back into town here. Like I'm here for work. I'm here to give back to community. I'm here to make amends to community and the people that I hurt in a different sort of way. But it's the same thing, right? It's about changing that narrative.
Well, but the other thing too is, I mean, you just doing what you're doing. I mean, you've got a job and had a job, giving back to the community and stuff like that. That in and of itself is because Mike talks about it probably more than I do, but we're both huge fans of that living amends. Showing people, rather than Mike always says, right, program of action.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So just give it a chance to again, you may not be giving back to every single, because you have mentioned all those different people and things like that you harmed and whatever the case is, but doing what you're doing actually ends up giving back to to people in general. So
yeah, exactly.
So what else? I mean, what else do you want to? I don't know. Share with people. Tell about people. I mean, you've got, and I knew it had a hell of a story. I knew that as much about the fact that you were a lawyer and you lost you lost your license. I didn't know the whole part of your story. But what else do you want to talk about?
Oh, I don't even really know what I want to talk about. I mean, beyond everything that I've said, I can't really think of anything. I mean, do you guys have any questions for me?
No, I mean, I think I've kind of asked along the way. What about you, Mike?
No, not at all. I mean, you apparently you're doing what you feel you need to do, which is cool. Yeah, you're giving back. You're, as I always say, try to make our little quarter of the world a better place. That's all we can do. That's what this program
Exactly.
has taught us to do. That's how we live our lives today to make our. Again, AA math, man. It doesn't fucking add up. Me trying to make my little corner of the world a better place makes my life better. How the fuck does that work? Me giving back, me doing things for other people makes my life better. How the fuck does that work? I don't know, but it does.
It's humility. It's humility, and
Right.
and also it's what is it? Ego off, soul on. That's one of my other favorite sayings, because when you're out of your head and out of that place of ego, or coming from that place, then you're able to make things better.
Right.
Yeah, we were just Mike and I were just talking about that. Was that last week that we were talking about the pride thing? Yeah, and it was the fact that it's because everyone always tells you in the program that we shouldn't be prideful and that sort of thing, which I do disagree with. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being proud as long as you're not being a dick about it, as long as you're not being an egotist about it. I mean, the way that I put it, I mean, I'm super proud of the time that we have. I mean, we're coming up on, I mean, in our it's 13 years. It's a lot of time, but we put the work in, we do what we need to do. But, and I'll tell anyone that, not anyone, but you know what I mean? I'll tell people who want to listen about, the time I have, but I'm not walking around and being an egotist to somebody who has, 6 years or 7 years or 2 months. I don't feel better than anyone, but when I look at it, I'm like, fuck, man, we did some work to get here, but we're not done yet. I mean, we got to continue to do that. But yeah, ego. I still have a bit of an ego, but I think it's a little more. It's a little bit more controlled than it used to be.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm more of an egotist in like real life, not when it comes to recovery. I'm not as much of a dick and an egotistical dick when it comes to this sort of thing, because this means too much to me. I'll act like more of an egomaniac sometimes in a normal situation, usually joking. But, when it comes to recovery, man, I know I didn't do this myself. And like Mike said before, I mean, he's not doing this on his own. We got plenty of people that have taught us, guided us, and still guide us along the way. So yeah.
Yeah, and we need that. We need other people's perspective.
Oh yeah,
right.
Which always brings me back to the first step, which has two parts to it, right? The first part, I'm powerless. I'm powerless over the substance. I cannot fucking win. I cannot safely use. I have no power over the substance. And the second part of that first step, that step the only step, thank Christ, that we only have to do 100%. Is my life is unmanageable. And guess what? My life is still unmanageable. If I try to manage my life, I'm going to fuck it up. What I do is I let the program and the principles of this program manage my life, and my life works for some reason.
Right.
And I don't question it anymore. I just, you know what? I let this shit manage my life, these principles. And as long as I do that, I stay sober and I don't hurt the people around me anymore. And that's all I really care about anymore.
Okay, here's a question. So do you ever act out of self-will? I mean, you got it every once in a while. But
of course.
You realize it and you correct yourself.
Yeah, right.
But I hate
I'm not perfect by any means. No. I try to take it back all the time, and then I catch myself, and my support group catches me, and they say, "Nope, you're wrong," and and then I let. Again, these principles manage my life, and it works.
Right. I love getting my hand slapped by self-will.
Yeah, we all have that. And I have no patience, and I need people like Mike and my sister, and people that are close to me. And thankfully, I've got half half the sense to go to people and be like, should I do this? Like, fuck no, you shouldn't do that, or you got to wait. Yeah, but
right.
As soon as
you're a bear.
As soon as I lose that sense to ask, then I'm in trouble. But yeah. So, but I mean, honestly, Nicole, it's been wonderful. We appreciate you. We appreciate you coming on, and
Thanks for asking me. I appreciate
not a problem
it.
at all. So, and you admittedly have not listened to any of our episodes, so you haven't heard one end yet. So, Mike always ends our episodes, so you and I get to quiet down for a minute. Mike gets to close us out. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Sober Not Mature. We want to thank Nicole for coming on and sharing her experience, strength, and hope with us. And as always, be kind to each other, be good to each other, do something nice for somebody else this week. And please, 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 fuck off. Then keep fucking off. Keep fucking off until you get to a gate with a sign on it saying you cannot fuck off past here. Climb over that gate. Dream the impossible dream and keep fucking off forever.
I heard you laughing right away, Nicole.
Sorry.
So and I always tell people this. The short story behind that is we were on like episode 2 or 3 or 4 maybe, and we're just like, we should figure out some sort of snappy way to end this. And Mike's exact words were, the only thing I could think of is fuck off. So, yeah,
fuck off. It's time to fuck off.
He started doing that, and then our sister is the one that gave us that. That was on a meme that she sent us, and we've been using that. Again, I always lose track of it for months now, 6 months, something like that, maybe.
Oh, at least.
Yeah. So that's our typical way we end an episode, and it makes me laugh.
That's how we sign off.
Yeah, it makes me laugh every time, and especially if we've had somebody that's never heard it before. Usually we hear the giggles in the background. So.
So we know we're doing the right thing. We're making others happy.
All right. Well, Mike, I love you, brother. Nicole, thank you. Thank you again for being on, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very, very much. Yeah.
All right. Everyone
awesome.
Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Bye. As always, thank you for listening to another episode of Sober, Not Mature. To access all of our content and interact with us, please visit our website, SoberNotMature.com. Thank you again for listening, and we will talk to you soon.